In the spring of 1865, as church bells rang to announce the death of slavery, screams echoed from a lonely Alabama field. 5 overseers pounded their fists against wooden coffins, their voices muffled by the soil above them. Buried alive by the very man they had once whipped, Samuel, their cries would fade with the night. Freedom had come, and he had delivered his own justice. Alabama, 1865. The Civil War had ended, and with it, centuries of legalized slavery in the South. But the news of freedom did not reach every plantation at once. On remote estates, enslaved people waited in silence, unsure if freedom was real or another cruel trick. One such place was the Waverly Plantation, an expanse of cotton fields, barns, and slave quarters. Its master, Richard Waverly, had fled when Union troops drew near, but he left behind his 5 trusted overseers, men hardened by years of violence. They ruled the plantation with fists, whips, and pistols, determined to keep the enslaved in line until the very last breath of the old order. Among the enslaved was Samuel. He was 40 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, his body a map of scars from decades of labor and punishment. Born into bondage, Samuel had seen brothers sold away, his wife whipped for defiance, and children starved during lean harvests. He had endured every cruelty the system devised, but Samuel was also a man of silence and thought. Others bent under the overseer's cruelty, but Samuel remembered. Every lash, every humiliation he carried like a stone in his chest. And when whispers of freedom drifted through the quarters, Samuel listened carefully. He knew change was near. He also knew men like the overseers would never let go without blood. Life on Waverly Plantation was misery stretched across years. Before sunrise, the horn called the enslaved into the fields. Overseers rode horseback, whips snapping at every slowed step. Cotton tore at fingers until they bled. Baskets were weighed at day's end, and anyone who fell short was punished. The overseers, 5 men named Harlan, Briggs, Dunn, Colby, and Tate, were feared for their brutality. Harlan, the oldest, carried a rawhide whip that had split hundreds of backs. Briggs, red-haired and temper-quick, favored the pistol, firing into the dirt near anyone who displeased him. Dunn and Colby worked in pairs, dragging men to the post when beatings were ordered. Tate, the youngest, laughed as he inflicted pain, eager to prove himself. Samuel endured it all, but he did not forget. He buried every memory deep, waiting. And then came April of 1865. The war was over. Union troops marched through towns reading the Emancipation Proclamation. Bells rang, papers declared slavery finished. But at Waverly, the overseers kept the truth hidden. They told the enslaved nothing had changed. They forced the same labor, dealt the same punishments. But Samuel had overheard travelers speak in hushed tones. He pieced together the truth. Freedom had arrived, and the overseers were lying. That night in the quarters, Samuel whispered to the others. Freedom was here, he said, but the overseers would never release them. If they wanted liberty, they must take it with their own hands. Fear spread through the quarters, but so did a fire Samuel had long carried. The plan was simple, brutal, and final. On the very night that freedom became law, Samuel would bury the old order, literally. April 12, 1865. The air was heavy with spring heat, the moon bright above the fields. The overseers gathered in their quarters near the barn, drinking and boasting, still lording over a plantation they no longer truly controlled. Samuel moved silently in the dark. He had prepared shallow graves in a field long abandoned, where the soil was loose and no one ventured after dusk. He gathered tools, shovels, ropes, and planks of wood. The others watched in fearful silence, too afraid to join but unwilling to stop him. When the overseers staggered out into the night, Samuel struck. The first was Tate, caught near the well. Samuel's hands, hardened by years of toil, closed around his throat until he dropped. Briggs came next, pistol half drawn before Samuel swung a shovel across his skull. Dunn and Colby, brothers in cruelty, were dragged down together, bound in the ropes they had once used on slaves. Harlan, the oldest, tried to flee, but Samuel's stride was long and his fury unstoppable. Within moments, all 5 were captured, beaten, and bound. They cursed him, spat at him, threatened death. But Samuel said nothing. He hauled them, one by one, to the field. There, in the moonlight, the graves yawned open. Wooden planks waited like coffins. Samuel forced each overseer into the pits. They struggled, screamed, begged. Briggs promised wealth. Harlan swore vengeance from beyond the grave. Tate wept like a child. But Samuel's face was stone. He shoveled dirt over them slowly, deliberately. The soil poured onto their chests, their faces. They thrashed against the ropes, voices muffled, then silenced as the earth swallowed them whole. When the last spade of dirt fell, Samuel stood in silence. 5 overseers, once masters of life and death, were gone, buried alive by the man they had sought to break. Morning came. The enslaved gathered in disbelief. Word arrived from nearby towns. The war was over, slavery was finished, they were free. But on Waverly Plantation, the overseers had vanished. No one asked too many questions. Some whispered Samuel had killed them. Others said the earth itself had claimed them as justice. Union troops eventually reached the plantation, declaring emancipation and dispersing the enslaved. Samuel walked away with nothing but his freedom. The graves remained unmarked in the field where the cries had once echoed. No court ever tried him. No record condemned him. The overseers were simply gone, and history moved forward. But among the freedmen, Samuel's story spread like wildfire. He became a legend, a man who had buried slavery with his own hands. In the years after, some said the field was haunted. Farmers who tried to till the soil claimed they heard muffled screams beneath the earth. Horses refused to cross it. Children were warned not to play there after dark. The land, they said, remembered. Samuel himself faded into history. Some claim he lived quietly as a freedman, working his own land. Others whisper he joined Union forces to hunt down former masters. No one knows for certain, but his act remained in memory, carried in whispers and stories passed from generation to generation. This was Samuel's story, a man enslaved all his life, who chose the night of abolition to deliver his vengeance. History recorded the end of slavery in laws and proclamations, but Samuel carved it into the earth itself. And though the overseers' names appear in dusty ledgers, it is Samuel S. Act that survives in legend. 5 men buried alive as the old world crumbled. If you want more hidden slave stories, watch this playlist here, and don't forget to subscribe. For every week we uncover the history others tried to bury. Until next time, remember, freedom is never given. It is taken. And sometimes it is won in the dead of night, with dirt, silence, and vengeance.